Ah, adventurer. I was hoping you'd drop by. I have an interesting opportunity for you. The owner of the workshop down by the Seven Sons Coster Market is looking for someone new to run the place.
Man, my first response in early 2021 when my first character got to this quest was no way, no how, not gonna happen. But 4 years, tens of millions of astral diamonds later, here we are. Hey everybody, I'm Kel, and now that you're here, let's talk about Neverwinter. When you're talking about the workshop in Neverwinter, you're really talking about two separate things. On one hand, you've got the story of Carmen Valeri. She's this headstrong artisan who was given control of a workshop, and her devotion to her adoptive father caused her to run the shop into the ground and resent everyone that she used to work with, who used to be her family and her friends. And on the other hand, you've got a standard workshop where you can exchange gold and sometimes astral diamonds that your characters have accumulated through play and turn them into gear or items or special enchantments that you can use to either sell or make your character more powerful. And the impact of the changes in Jewel of the North when leveling changed from 80 levels to 20 levels affected the two parts of the workshop in completely different ways. From a storyline perspective, stretched across 80 levels of experience, the first time my character encountered Carmela, after that initial encounter, I had no memory of who she was. There just wasn't enough to string together everything that had to happen, while you were also exploring places like Black Lake and Merchants District and Ebon Downs and Helm's Hold and Skyhold and all these other locations. As you're slowly accumulating these levels and experience points and gear, and very slowly also accumulating levels across your artisans, who also each individually leveled up to 80. As your artisans gain levels, you unlock different story elements. And it was just, and I should only speak for myself here, way too much to remember this character and her story as things went on. So from a storytelling perspective, Jewel of the North really compressed things in such a way that I was able to kind of put together what was happening, remember who Carmela was, and actually realize that there were story elements going on and actually piece it together in my head. Now, the reverse, the mechanical and game impacting element of the shop, making gear and other things that you could potentially sell, well, Jewel of the North gutted that. Unfortunately, there was a time when an item that you could make when you were level 20 would last you until you got another item when you were maybe level 26, and those 6 levels might take you some time to gain. You had to earn experience points from killing monsters and completing quests, and that took time. And it was really cool to be able to go back to your shop and accumulate these items and use those to build things that might actually compare or be better than the stuff you were getting when you were out in the adventure zones. On top of that, you could actually sell these things. You could sell level 40 gear, which would be level 10 gear by today's standards. You could sell that for astral diamonds on the Tarmaloon Trade House. And if you've checked recently, there isn't really a market for level 10 gear because you're level 10 these days for maybe a half hour, and then you've moved on to your next level of gear. So from an economy standpoint, from a just service standpoint, there's really not a lot to be gained from the majority of what's in the shop other than fashion items. You can make these and you can convert them into fashion items, and that's really what you get out of the majority of what's in the workshop these days. There are some exceptions, like your jewels and your other enchantments that you can make that you can slot into your gear. And really, that's the reason that I would still suggest that if you're starting out with Neverwinter and you're working on your first character, to think about accepting this shop quest when Sergeant Knox offers it to you. If you're the sort of person like I was back in the beginning when I got that quest and I thought, oh, that sounds like a nightmare, you can buy these jewels and other enchantments off the Tarmalune Trade House. They're not going to be as cheap, but it's a whole lot easier to go out and buy them from someone else who has a shop than it would be to go through the headaches and trouble of leveling up all of these artisans to get to the point where you can make them for yourself. On the other hand, there are some benefits to being able to make things for yourself. Every single time you get new gear, you need new jewels to go with it. Otherwise, you're leaving almost 1% stats for each new piece of gear you equip just laying on the table unused. And nobody wants to leave stats on the table, especially not percentage point stats. And so you either end up going back to the Tarmalune Trade House every time you get a new piece of equipment and buying that gem or jewel or enchantment, or you go back to your own shop and it's a little bit cheaper to make it for yourself and you slot it in right away. So that's kind of the toss-up that you're looking at in terms of whether the workshop is right for you. Now, Mastercraft, on the other hand, is kind of the opposite of what I just said. Story-wise, Mastercraft used to have a really significant storyline component where you would go to your guild and the Master of Coin would tell you about this artisan who had come to the guild. And now this part still happens. She still sends you off to the artisan, and the artisan still tries to avoid admitting that he is the master that she believes he is. And there's some back and forth between these two that frankly hasn't aged very well. And yet, the master would send you to Port Nyanzaru in Chult. And if you've ever walked through Port Nyanzaru and found villagers or townsfolk in Port Nyanzaru that you could speak to and thought, wow, this town seems really fleshed out. It's really kind of cool that, I could just walk up to this person and they'll say something to me. That's not because Port Nyanzaru is better developed than other towns. Those are the places where Mastercraft quests used to begin and have been chopped off. And now you're left with the illusion of a living, breathing Chultan town in Port Nyanzaru, which is cool. I like that. But unfortunately now Mastercraft is just a transaction. You don't go to Port Nyanzaru anymore to meet artisans and take commissions and develop your skills and proceed through Mastercraft. Becoming a Mastercrafter in Neverwinter at this point just requires you to save up enough astral diamonds to go to the Mastercrafter who has the skills that you need and purchase a book that gives you recipes for your artisans back in your shop. There's no role-playing, there's really no exploration, and there's very little gameplay other than endless random queues to accumulate tens of millions of astral diamonds by the time you're done. Okay, and I say tens of millions there. Chultan Mastercraft is only going to cost you something like $7.5 million. But Chultan Mastercraft is so old that the item level, the stats, the abilities, everything about it doesn't measure up to what's in use right now. And in order to move on to Sharandar Masterwork, you have to purchase all of Chultan Masterwork. Sharandar Masterwork is going to cost you 15 million astral diamonds. And then you run into the exact same situation. Sharandar is basically Chultan Masterwork on steroids. And in order to move on to Menzoberranzan Masterwork, you need to buy all 15 million astral diamonds worth of Sharandar Masterwork. Then the Menzoberranzan is another 15 million. And it's completely different from the Masterwork in Chult and Sharandar. It's a completely different approach. The abilities don't stack, and it gives you completely different abilities at a current item level. But if past is prologue, we're going to see another set of Mastercraft in the future that's going to cost you at least another 15 million. And frankly, at this point, even the Menzoberranzan Mastercraft isn't best in slot for a lot of gear. And the amount of time and random queues and astral diamonds and everything being sequential and requiring you to buy everything that came before so that you can build up to this current level of masterwork. Every single time they add another level on, they make the idea of becoming a master crafter with your workshop a little more ridiculous. I really enjoy the Carmen Valeri storyline. I really enjoy my memories of the Chultan Mastercraft storyline. I don't know whether they had planned similar things in Sharandar. It seems like the characters were put in place and the events were never added. If there's one thing that was impacted worse than anything else in Jewel of the North when the levels were crunched down to 20, it's the workshop. The gear doesn't help you. It's just appearance items. And Mastercraft, because of the way it's set up, isn't really a viable option for new players to the game. I hear a lot of folks and I read a lot of comments from people who are asking for updates to the guild and the stronghold. And I'm not disagreeing. That would be fantastic. But I would also say the workshop was completely left behind when levels went from 80 to 20 and Jewel of the North changed things up. And a complete overhaul of the workshop is also necessary in order to just make it a viable experience. I do recommend new players seriously think about doing the first 20 levels across all of the artisans so that you can make your own jewels and enchantments for your gear. I know that the dev team is understaffed and overworked, and there have been a lot of changes lately at Cryptic. This is one area of Neverwinter that, frankly, is in desperate need of repair. Also, the strongholds and the guilds and a bunch of other things. This is an area that just is not working as intended in the game today. So, just to wrap up, mechanics-wise, game-wise, Tarmaloon Trade House-wise, the workshop has very, very, very limited opportunities. On the other hand, story-wise, the story of Carmen Valeri is well worth exploring. If you're in this game for the story, for the role-playing aspects of it, it's not that difficult these days to play through 20 levels of artisans, save up the astral diamonds to get to your level 4 workshop. It's still a haul, but it's very, very attainable. And then you're not reliant on the market for things like jewels or enchantments for your gear also. So it is worth looking into your workshop, but if you're going to go past level 20, past level 4 workshop, really take a look. Watch some YouTube videos, see what you're getting in store for. The destination for periods of time is well worth it. But then it fades and you have to wait for the next destination to come. If it weren't tens of millions of astral diamonds to get through all the levels of Mastercraft, I would recommend it heartily. It's worth it. There's a sense of accomplishment. You can get some good gear out of it. The alchemical stuff, you get some good potions and things like that. But seriously, a potion that lasts through death is not worth, what, 37.5 million astral diamonds and all the time it takes to accumulate it. So think about it, see if it's good for you. Do recommend the Carmen Valeri storyline, but beyond the basic workshop, be sure it's what you want to get into. I hope you found the information in this video useful. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Let us know that you want more in the comments below. Look forward to seeing you next time when we talk about Neverwinter.